Okay, everyone. I am really delighted that we have Dr. Mani Nepal from Nepal joining us today. He's in Kathmandu. It's probably late at night there, and it'll be a few days before you see this in class. I'll give a brief introduction to Dr. Nepal now, and then we'll have a more of a discussion about his day job at the end of the lecture. Mani, as I've known him now for almost, 12 years, 13 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
Has his PhD from University of New Mexico in environmental economics, where he worked on a whole host of issues, not just on problems in Nepal, but then has taught here for a bit and then been leading in the last 5 years at least the SANDEE network, which you heard about a little bit when Priya was giving a lecture, and we'll talk about SANDEE in a bit. But that's a research and capacity building organization. But for the rest of the time, he continues to be very actively involved in a whole host of environmental and resource economics research in the region. And we'll hear about one of those today. It's not something we've talked about much in class, but probably all of you have a good sense from those of you who worked in around the world that solid waste is one of those silent killers. It's out there everywhere, and economists like to study nice, clean things like trees and biodiversity and water, but everybody is a bit squirmy about things like garbage and solid waste, even though it's a massive, massive environmental problem. So with that, I will turn it over to Mani. Hopefully he can share a screen. If not, I'll tweak that just now. Okay. All yours, Mani. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Professor Patnaik, for having me today. So what I'm going to do today is just share a little bit about the research that we have done for the past 3.5 years, almost 4 years now. We started this research in 2017, funded by IDRC. So the research is about, as you have already mentioned, the economics of soil use management and drainage and sustainable approach to making South Asian cities climate resilient. So that's the title. So the motivation of this research was about, if you look at South Asian cities, we can see waterlogging, flooding, all kind of issues every summer. And we, in this research, we would like to see, actually, we looked at three, main things. One is the issues that the cities are facing is unplanned urban growth. Now, not like what you can see in the US, where everything is planned way, but here in this part of the world, things happen automatically without much planning of the government. And also the consumer habit has been changing these days, and the waste has been generated a lot, but not managed properly. So that makes this, these cities very vulnerable to waterlogging, flooding, because if you add that the extreme climatic events like extreme rainfall, then the city, the system, the drainage system cannot, drain those, waters and the waste, blocking system. So the waterlogging potential, the risk is very high. So that was the issue, and we wanted to understand what can be done to address those issues in this part of the world. So there are potentially two solutions for that problem. One is generally called hard interventions, where cities can invest a lot of money for creating infrastructures, drainage system, where, so that you can actually don't have that problem. And the other one is generally, it's a human behavior, changing human behavior, called soft interventions, where citizens are expected to behave well, so managing waste properly. In literature, it is called 3 Rs: reuse, reduce, and recycle. And also that actually requires segregation at home, which we don't see generally in this part of the world. People don't segregate; they just dump it, whatever it is, outside, and most of the time not picked up by the city for varieties of reasons. Even if that is picked up, they pick it and then dump somewhere in the open space. That can be forest, that can be like, water bodies kind of things. So it creates actually a big mess. So given these issues, our objective, we have actually many objectives in this research because this was a big research project over 3 years. So first we wanted to understand, waterlogging flooding risks in 2 cities in South Asia. One is in Bangladesh, Sylhet city. The other one is Nepal, Bharatpur, which are, both are medium-sized cities, not like a big metro, but smaller, not too small, like a medium size. The population is around 300 to 500 million, 100,000, 0.5 million. And also we wanted to understand if the low-cost interventions are effective in addressing those waterlogging flooding issues, mainly through managing soil waste properly. Okay, and third one was to understand if the cities are clean, what the citizens, the residents would get in terms of we actually looked at the housing property price. What happens? What's the premium that they would get if the cities are cleaner? Okay. And also, we also wanted to look at what the city residents are actually wanting. Is the system, whatever they are facing, is enough? Do they want some improvement? If yes, how much they're willing to pay for the improvement of the waste management system in those cities? And also, with all those improvements, it takes money. And we also want to explore how the city can get, financing. What is the sustainable way of financing those activities? So this research actually explored all these components, plus there are more, but I just want to focus on some of these issues, okay? So in terms of research components, yes?
Can I ask you a question, Mani? So
yeah,
unlike many of the proposals we review, where initially the candidate comes to us with 15 questions and we say, oh, there are too many questions, you have to focus. This seems to be a very ambitious project with lots of objectives, right? So I think you did not mention it, but this might be a good time. There was a large team working with you, right?
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay.
After this slide, I'll discuss that part. Okay. So in this research, we have different components. One is, this hydrological or hydrodynamic modeling to understand the waterlogging flooding potential in those 2 cities. And second one was to understand the effectiveness of some low-cost interventions through randomized control trial, RCT. Third one was choice experiment to understand the preference of the households who are living in those cities, what they want, how much they were, were willing to pay for improvements. And fourth one was to understand the value of the cleaner neighborhood, which we used the Hedonic price model. The other one was supply chain analysis of the plastic waste, how it is generated, where it goes, and all kinds of things. And exploring the financing aspect, how to get money to finance those activities. And the project also developed mobile application, mobile app for city, managers and then citizens and the waste, collectors, all kind of, stakeholders to help them managing the waste better, which was mobile application we deployed in Bharatpur for, helping the city to manage the waste better. Okay, these are the different components. So as you can see, there are different types, not just economic components. So the research team here, I have most of the names here, but so there are 4 or 5 economists of different areas, and rest are other disciplines. So it is quite interdisciplinary team. From hydrologists to modelers to GIS experts to urban planner, waste management expert, gender expert, environmental scientist, land use survey expert. There are components that I'll discuss, and value chain expert. So you can see a whole host of team, and where we have about 40% were women. So we wanted to make team more or less inclusive of the researchers. And all these researchers are from Nepal, Bangladesh, and also from India, from 3 countries. So the putting this team together, like, took a lot of time actually, because we spent a year writing the proposal before the project is started. So it was open call from IDRC. So we actually put the proposal and then we actually got the grant for doing the research. So it was a huge effort from, from all different stakeholders. And I did not include the institutions that were involved. So like 2 cities from 2 countries, there are other different institutions that we work with. So I'll mention those when I present some of the components, relevant components. So let's go to the study areas. So in the left side, you can see Nepal, and the right side, Bangladesh. And those blue dots and red inside are the cities that we studied. Both are actually at the foothills and by the rivers. Okay, similar characteristics, in terms of geography, in terms of their characteristics. But in terms of area, Bharatpur is a little bigger. But in terms of the the residential area, both are similar actually, because Bharatpur, this whole metro area, where most of the area is rural area, they use for farming, all kind of things. So for this research, we started, working with this hydrologist and land survey, experts, all kind of things. So we collected data like land level, river cross section, and water flow, how much water is flowing in those rivers over the summer of 2017. Whole from June to September, we monitor water flow in the river every 30-minute reading for creating the database for modeling those waterlogging flooding potential in those cities. And same thing we did in Sylhet, okay? We also used historical meteorological, hydrological data from the departments from both cities. So you can see all those equipments that we established in Bharatpur. Mostly I'm presenting these things from Bharatpur. So here, this machine is rain gauge, automatic rain gauge. This is something that when you put in the river, it gives you all kind of data from the information, the water flow, pressure, like volume, all kind of things. And then here we're measuring cross section of the river, in one place, just to give you some sense what went in this research. And we also did socioeconomic survey for collecting data for understanding, the household preferences, and Rct interventions and its effectiveness. So we collected information from Bharatpur, where each red dot here is the community, not the households. There are 350 communities within the metro, and we sampled about 150 communities within the metro out of 350. And from each metro, from each community, we have 7 households. So altogether so we surveyed 1,050 households for baseline survey. And we did the intervention and did the 2 follow-up surveys. So I'll explain that in the next slides. So before doing surveys, we went to the city and did a lot of focus group discussion to understand the issues. So some of the pictures you can see here in the slide. So this is the design for the Rct interventions. So we have 2 intervention, 2 arms. One is control, one is intervention. And we did community level interventions, where intervention actually involves creating awareness to the households and the community leaders, and also installing low-cost waste bins in the streets to see if those actually help cities to make those streets cleaner. Okay, so some more pictures here. So here you can see these are the pre-proposal trips that we made in the city to understand the issue better. So we had a lot of discussion with the city officials, what issue they have been facing, what kind of issue they actually recommend for doing research. So all kind of, we spent over a year establishing our relationship to the city, officials, residents, all kind of things, before we actually did our baseline survey. So these are some of the activities that we did before the survey. And after baseline, we did this community level interventions, where you can see, community, we mobilized a lot of people locally for going to the community. We trained them first, and then they went to the communities, 150 communities, like every community we actually organized 4 hours workshop for about 30, 35, 40 people in one workshop for about several days in 2017 December. And this is the low-cost intervention I said earlier. These are the bins we installed in the city because residents actually asked us if we can help them to installing these bins so that people who are traveling to the city, going like for day traveler actually, they eat noodles and throw the small pouches around the streets and they cannot collect it. So we actually put these bins in the intervention TLOs to see their effectiveness. So these are some of the other activities that we did with the cities. Yes.
So just to be clear, then the city sends trucks or to collect empty these bins, right? That's how it gets out of there.
Yes. So we actually had a lot of discussion with them, what we're going to do and how we're going to do, and what kind of cooperation we expect from the city and the waste collectors there. So it was done in collaboration with everybody, all the stakeholders. And these are some of the pictures from we work with the cities and from start to finish. So different times every 6 months, or we did different types of updates, meetings with them. So this is the dissemination workshop that we did at the end of the once we know the results of the research, we went back again and organized dissemination workshops in the left side. In the right side, you can see we also organized a national level actually conference for a lot of big stakeholders, including the minister is there inaugurating the conference. And I was invited to give a talk to different organizations after we finished the, here you can see Tribhuvan University invited me, and this is at ICIMOD where we hosted South Asia Student Economics Meet in January last year. And the other one is Fulbright Lecture Series. They invited me to share what we found, all kind of things. So these are some representative talks that I gave after finishing the research. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some of the findings, what we found actually, right? So the first was understanding water logging risks in the city. So this research has been published in Water Policy last year, 2020. So what we did is, as I said earlier, we work in 2 cities, Bharatpur in Nepal and Sylhet in Bangladesh. So I put here 2, graphs for pictures or map for Bharatpur. This one, the left one, as you can see, you have more red color here. That means what area is currently under the risk of flooding and waterlogging, given how the city is managing solid waste and urban growth and all kind of things. And the second one is after putting different types of interventions, like extending canals, drainage system, making city cleaner, solid waste management system is better. So that earlier, without intervention in Bharatpur, about 13% area was under flooding risk, right? With all kinds of interventions, a different scenario, the best scenario is it comes around under 5% area under flooding risk. So big reduction from 13% to 5% in Bharatpur after interventions, right? Different types of interventions, which we did not do it. It is just, after doing all land level, river cross section, all this hydrological modeling. So these are the simulated results. And in the right-hand side, you see the Sylhet, where currently meaning 2017 baseline, about 22% land area was under flooding risk in Sylhet. And after the intervention, different types of interventions, it was down to 3%. So a lot of improvement in the risk, right? Reduction in the flooding risk. But what we did is, if the city doesn't manage the waste properly, what happens to those investments? What would be the returns from the investment? And what we found is after around 5 years of the intervention, the flooding risk area goes up to 8% in Bharatpur, from 5 to 8. If the city does not put a system in place for, waste collection system in place. In Shillite, it is even worse. The flooding risk area actually goes up to 18%. Earlier, it was 22%. With a lot of investment, it came down to 3%. But investment minus the intervention in solid waste management, the problem goes back to 18%. That means the returns from investment is quite low after 5 years. If the cities are not putting, the effort on managing solid waste better. Okay, so that is the key findings from this first component that we did in these two cities. Now, the rest of the presentation, what I'll do is I'll focus on Nepal only, because it will be too much, because we did parallel research in Bangladesh and Nepal. So let me focus on Nepal side one. Yes, so the second research that we did is, yes.
Quick clarification, Mani. So when you say that you're going to focus on Nepal, it's each objective was studied in both places, right? In theory, you have twice the number of studies, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, this one we did jointly. This waterlogging flooding risk, right? This was the joint paper. And after that, we decided to do individually, like separately in both cities, parallelly. Okay. So the second research, we actually wanted to know what happens if the cities are cleaner. What is the premium on like a property price? Okay. So for that, what we did is this research actually out last year, last summer in World Development. So this is a little bit countrywide study in Nepal, not just the Bharatpur, but we covered all the urban areas. In Nepal, about 58 cities in Nepal. So we looked at cities in Nepal, 58 cities, where some of them were those waste management system in place, and some cities didn't have it. So using that variation in the waste management system in those cities, so we actually looked at the what happens to housing price if some cities have it and some don't have it. We estimated that the price premium because of this waste management system. Okay, so it's I think everybody knows what is hedonic price model. I'm not going to discuss much, but here there are like a different what do you call it characteristics of the household, housing property. When you buy a house, what you look at is structural characteristics. What's the size, lot size, area, how many rooms, how many bathrooms, what are the materials, all kind of things. And also you look at the neighborhoods, how far from the city center, how far from the police station, how far is from the school, hospitals, all kind of those community services. And also what is the environmental characteristics? Is it closer to the forest or nearby the lake or nearby the river kind of things? But in our case, what we look at is, whether the community has the waste management service. That is the environmental characteristic we wanted to look at, okay? And then it can be estimated econometrically. We did that. So this is the study areas all over Nepal, all these urban centers for this. And then red here is the Bharatpur in the middle of this upper graph, okay? So we have data from that, and we used separately. Our data we also used from Bharatpur, and we also used secondary data, which is collected by the Nepal government, okay? So Nepal Living Standard Survey, which actually has all the information that are needed for doing hedonic pricing model. So I just want to show one table here. So just our concern is about the whether the city has garbage collection service. It's a binary yes or no, okay? And all others are the control variables. I did not put everything here because they're too messy, too many variables. So there's some of the important variables are listed here. And if you look at what we did is, those who are, not familiar with Nepal geography, it is we have mountain, hills in Tarai. It's Tarai is the flatland in the southern belt. and mountain hills are a little bit in the northern part where these big mountains are there. Nobody lives in the mountains, but in the middles, people live there. So we divided market into two segments, hill and Tarai, and we actually did the in our estimates. And we use different models. So those 1 and 2 are two different specifications. And with those changing the specification, more or less the coefficients, sign and significance are similar. Okay, but these are log linear models, so you cannot directly interpret the results. So I have another information for that. Of course, those waste management services are not put at random in the cities. Those are deliberately put by the city officials. So there are of course selection bias. We wanted to look at how we can actually address that, and once we address whether we still get those effects of the solid waste management. So out of many potential approaches, we used propensity score matching approach, which is very very much useful for this type of research, and economists have been using it. So after this PSM, where PSM, those two groups are, one group has the service and the other doesn't have it. That's the intervention. Okay, so that separates two groups. And we wanted to see like cities and houses similar in nature in cities, same like in housing area, the floor area, lot size, different types of materials, same. But one house doesn't have the service, the other has it. And what's the price difference between those two, right? That's what it does, this PSM, propensity score matching. So just some to give you a feel how we did it and what's the usefulness of the matching. You can see those solid dots are before matching. What's the bias, standardized bias before matching, and this cross, this around the vertical line, they're very close to vertical line, almost zero. So bias is almost gone after matching in both in Tarai and the hills. Okay, so so the matching was good for estimating the effects, and just to give you some feel of the coefficient estimates with hedonic pricing and then PSM, more or less similar. You can see here. Okay. So RA is a regression adjustment. So that is one type of matching. Okay. So, and the PSM is this propensity matching with nearest neighbor. That's the algorithm we use for matching. So similar, this estimates after matching or before matching or after matching. So this graph actually gives implicit prices of the the different types of properties. But I just want to highlight the last one, which is waste collection service in the neighborhood. So red is for urban hills, green is for urban Tarai, and yellow is for Bharatpur here, a little bit higher here. So those implicit prices for waste management is about 25% to 57% in our study, which is very big actually, and these have been, all these things are discussed in the paper that I indicated earlier, which is published. So those who are interested, you can look at it and see, why we got these big numbers. The other component was understanding the preferences of the households. So I don't want to go too detail in this one but I'll give you some feel of it, what we did. So we wanted to understand whether the households are happy with the system the cities are providing, the solid waste management services, and if not, what they would like to get, what kind of service they want to see or prefer, and how much they're willing to pay for that. And for that, what we did is we used the approach called choice experiment, which is another non-market valuation approach, used in environmental economics, of course, in others like marketing and all kind of things. So for that, we need to understand what are the key attributes that households actually prefer to see. So in the first column, you can see the attributes that we actually identified after a lot of discussion, series of discussion with the city officials and then households in the city and garbage, all kind of different types of consumers, households in the city. And they actually identified three. One is the frequency of collection, how often the garbage is collected from the house. Once a week, twice a week, every day, or like, once in 2 weeks kind of thing. And also the timing of the collection was very key factors for them. So the reason is here, because, let's say, I put my garbage outside at 10 a.m. in the morning, and the collector comes at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And those 4 hours in between, what happens is a lot of excavengers who actually come for getting different types of materials for recycling, they open up the whatever, the can or bag, and they take whatever they like, and they throw everything in the street. And ultimately, the garbage actually ends up in the street and the drainage, So that was a big problem in the city. There was no synchronized collection system, right? A lot of gap between putting waste outside and then picking it up. And also on the street were not clean, and they wanted to, see if the waste bins actually helps. And for these improvements, how much additional tariff, because the cost will be higher if you want better service. And we have those 4 attributes with different levels. At the last column, you can see what levels we have used. Red is the status quo, and the other black are the proposed improvements. Okay, so for example, the timing of collection are 2 levels. One is whatever the city was doing that time, and the second was convenient time, whenever households are actually, let's say, Sunday 12 p.m. The garbage collector comes to my house. If that is fixed, I always put garbage at 12 p.m., 12 a.m. What do you call it? Midday. Let's forget a.m. p.m. Midday outside, right? So there's less chance of scattering that garbage in the street. So that's what the households actually wanted to see. And the additional cost is here 10% more, 20% more, 30% more on top of what they were paying during that time, because Bharatpur had a system already there. The only problem is about 50% households were not happy with the system. So that's why we ended up doing this study, what improvement can be done, right? So this is one of the examples of the choice set coming out from the experiment. We had 16 choice sets like that, and each household actually faced 4 out of 16 randomly. Okay. So I already discussed about this. We surveyed about 1,050 households from those 150 communities in Bharatpur. So we have 4 choice sets for each household. So in total, we have 4,200 observations per choice experiment, and that we analyzed using this random parameter logit and other options. And what we found is collection is for the convenient. They're willing to pay about 12 rupees additional, right? The average price that time, the fee was about 40 rupees that time, an additional 12 rupees. So you can do the percentage increase in the contribution. Okay. So for 20-liter bins in the street, their additional willingness to pay was about 10 rupees, which is Nepali currency. 1 rupee is about 1 cent, to just give you some idea. Okay. So $1 is about 100 rupees in Nepal. Right now it is a little bit more, but more or less. And less frequent than now. If the collection is less frequent, they are willing to pay less, which actually makes sense. And how much less? About 17 rupees less from the current. And if the house has different floors, like more than 1-story house, they are willing to pay extra, which actually makes sense because maybe there are more people living or they are generating more garbage, right? So these are the key estimates. And using those estimates, what we did is we looked at how much revenue the city can actually collect. So we came up with the from this whole an increment, about 5 million extra rupee per year to the city in Bharatpur. And we also did some cost benefit analysis, how much actually it costs to make all those improvements, sending people on time for collecting garbage in given day and time. It is about 16.5% additional cost to the city, which was about 6.5 million. Okay, so 5 million extra revenue city could generate, but it would cost about 6.5 million. So the gap was about 1.5 million. Okay. So we wanted to see, like, how that money can be generated for the city. We explored that angle also in this research. Okay, but I'll discuss that after this one more component here. So this one is related to the RCT intervention. So you wanted to see if the low cost intervention, like what we did is we provided two interventions. One is awareness, the other one is putting bins on the street. And we wanted to see if the cities are cleaner, if the households started segregating waste at home, and if they start giving to the collectors instead of throwing away or burning in the street or the open space, open dumping, okay? And so there are all, these different elements. So our idea was to look at what happens to the cleanliness and what happens to the segregation and what happens to the, disposal practice of the households. Are they giving their waste to the collectors, or they are still dumping outside in the open space? Okay, and what we found is there are three things we found is this. So streets are cleaner after intervention, right? That's what we found. After we had three rounds of survey, right? One is baseline. We compared that with other follow-up 2 rounds of survey, midline and inline surveys. So we found that people, if they reported actually their streets are cleaner after the interventions in those project areas. And then they also reported that they actually started giving more often to the city waste collectors instead of dumping outside. But what we found is they did not, the intervention did not increase the at source segregation. Okay, that's the we did not find impact on the segregation. And there are regions, and this paper actually now under review, we submitted to ERE, Environment and Resource Economics. So it is under review right now. So the last one is this financing aspect. So I just want to highlight one thing only, okay? Because so Subrendra, how I'm doing in terms of time, how much time I have?
You have a few minutes, yeah. So
okay, so let me, let me just quickly. So what we did for this financing aspect, so we looked at two things. One is in different cities across the country in Nepal. So I showed earlier, we have the urban waste collection data, collected by ADB earlier, a few years back, and we used those data from 58 municipalities across the country. And that data set has the collection efficiency, right? It also has the what percent of the materials are recovered from those waste stream, like the plastics, how much plastics is recovered and for recycling, and we also look at the cost of per ton, the waste management cost per ton, and also the price per kg of the recovered materials. Okay, so all this information we got from the existing data set, and our goal was to look at what is happening in these cities. Are they making money, or they are in loss, and how much waste they are recycling, and what is the potential for covering the cost of waste management, but just increasing the recycling. So existing collection efficiency was about 33% during that survey. So 1/3 of the waste was collected, and material recovery rate was about 12% that time. And we wanted to see if that has been increased to 13, 14, 15, up to 30%, what happens to the, this, what do you call it? Cost recovery. So here I highlighted this one point here, one number, 103.3. That means if the recovery rate is 15%, right? And if the collection efficiency is 50%, that actually helps covering the cost of this plastic related waste management to the cities. Okay, we did a lot of other options here. So some of them are shown in this table, but this one shows that aspect. Okay, so it needs a lot of, like an earlier, as I said, the current situation, 33% of the collection efficiency, it needs to be improved to 50%. And with the 15% recovery rate, meaning how much plastic you can actually recover from the system, is 15%. Okay, not everything, but if you recover 15% plastics with the 50% collection efficiency, the revenue you generate from selling plastic actually covers the cost of like and managing that waste. Okay, so we did other like different options, different simulation, and we also look at the, if the system is what it is, because you cannot change it overnight. Those are the our wish, right? Increasing efficiency from 33% to 50%, which is like may not happen overnight or over months. So we wanted to see what are the other options, and we wanted to see if we increase the import tariff on plastic related materials to a certain percent, and how much revenue can we generate by the government at the central level, so that they can actually distribute that to the cities for managing the waste. So the last row gives that percentage increase in the tariff, import tariff in the plastic materials. And you can see here if something like it goes from 0% to 0.7% under different conditions. That means if like government wants to collect revenue for managing this kind of waste, and if it increases tariff on plastic import by 1% or less than 1%, it generates enough revenue for like for spending waste management system, right, across the country, all municipal areas in Nepal. So that was our conclusion, and this paper is also published in PLOS One earlier, in few months back. So some takeaways here I just want to highlight, which actually I just discussed. So maybe I should move on to the the slide which has some of the key findings from the whole project. I haven't put everything, but whatever I discuss are here, right? So the risks, flooding, waterlogging risks is 22% in Sylhet, 13% Bharatpur, goes down to certain level and comes back to 18, almost 19% in Sylhet, and almost 8% in Bharatpur if waste is not managed properly. That's the message, right? And if the city provides proper waste management service, households are willing to pay additional money, and that additional is about 10 to 28% of whatever city is collecting right now. In terms of actual number, it comes around 5 million rupees per year. And if the city provides the service that household want, it costs money, and how much it costs is about 17% additional to what the city has been spending right now, which is about 6.5 million, right? So there is a gap, revenue gap, and that can be bridged by just putting less than 1% additional import duty on plastic imports. Okay, and when the cities are cleaner, the housing price goes up, and the price premium is at least 25% in Bharatpur. And in other cities that we did, nationwide, it was much higher, from 34 to 57%, depending on whether it's a hill or in Tarai. Okay. So we actually, so here are the, Subrendu, I already shared the slides. You can share with the students, and here are the links for all the papers that I discussed. And we also published a lot of in popular media like newspapers. So there is one video link here we produced that also summarizes the key findings of the research, and some of the other popular media that take up the story and they put the story about this research. So as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of institutions that work with us. So IDRC provided us funding. So Bharatpur Metropolitan City, Sylhet City Corporation, so NDRI Nepal, PNAP Nepal, Asian Center for Development Bangladesh, and Integrated Water Modeling Bangladesh, and about 20 plus researchers work with us. So with that, I would like to end. So if any of you are interested to contact me, here is my email ID, and you can find more about SANDEE in that link also. Okay. So with that, thank you, Subrendu, for providing the forum for sharing our research, and I hope it's useful to the students also. Thank you.
Okay, before we let you go, I have just one comment and two questions. And the comment is both for you and the students in the class that, this is, you've read lots of papers, and sometimes we've gotten the speakers to reflect on the papers that they wrote. And it's been clear that the one or two papers that you read is part of a bigger project. But perhaps to me, this project signals how broad scope the research is, right? And how many things you have to worry about, not just thinking about preferences, but on the engineering side and the most cost-effective solutions. And I think I just want to applaud the team for not just like looking at what is people's preferences for having waste disposal in their communities, and thinking about it in a more holistic way and all the aspects of it. So that's pretty unique, right? Most people don't take on such a big, ambitious, different aspects of the project. Sorry, I'm just overwhelmed by how much was there. I sort of had heard about this project on and off, but not the gory details. The second thing is a question for you, Mani. And so I can see, especially with your acknowledgement slides, that many policy agencies were involved in guiding you and giving you feedback on how to think about it. I wanted you to reflect for a few minutes on what sort of at the back end, what policy uptake or reactions, a dissemination workshop, how that has gone, right? So you have all these results and you're going back to some of these agencies. Has there been much of that, right? They've listened and they've asked questions, they asked for more analysis, or like they've changed some plans. What would you say this back-end policy engagement?
Yeah, there are, I want to just share two things. So one is, as I said earlier, so we also developed the mobile application for managing solid waste. So this application is now fully functional and used. They have been using it in Bharatpur, and time to time I actually contact the city officials, and they're actually appreciating the mobile applications that we develop, and they have been using it. Number one. Number two, after our research, we share our findings, and we actually recommend them. What our first recommendation was to actually enforce at source segregation of the waste. If they don't segregate, if households don't segregate, no matter what you do, you cannot actually reduce your cost of collections. Once they start segregating, a lot of households actually compost at home. And 70% of the waste was organic, which could be like, in theory, you can use at home as a compost, right? So what the city did after our research is they actually put a policy in place. Now they are collecting waste only if the households are segregating. They are not collecting all garbage put together. So households are forced to segregate at source. And those who want to, compost, they are doing composting at home. Otherwise, city actually collects separately and manages separately. So in that way, you actually increase the amount of the recyclable items, because once you segregate, your recycling rate will also be higher. And the the plastic that has been going to the rivers earlier has been reduced substantially because of this, the emphasis on the segregation. Right. So that is one of the contribution of our research to direct, the implementation on the ground in Nepal. In Sylhet, what happened, after the research was focused on household level waste management earlier. The city actually asked the team to look at the business sector also after we did this. And the city actually provided the funding for extending the research to the business sector, how actually the waste generated from different business sectors can be managed. So those are the two things I would like to share.
Yeah, so one quick follow-up on that, and then I'll get to the bigger last question, and then we can, it's late for you, so we should let you go. So did your research uncover why and how households are reluctant to do this segregation at sorting, and sorting at source, sorry? By that I mean, it's one thing to say the city will not pick up your garbage unless you sort, but it's still, and you may have made this recommendation, but some time in this last 3 years while you've been doing this work, it may have become clear to you that this is the reason people are not doing it. Either they don't have space, they're not informed, they need some incentive, they need, what would you say are the main two or three constraints?
In our this randomized control trial, so we actually investigated that component, right? Whether households are segregating more or less after the intervention. So what we found is our intervention did not help improving the segregation. That was before the policy. Okay, so let's not mix up. The policy came later, but our research was after the intervention. We provided a lot of information to the households, how to segregate, why not to burn, and all kind of things, and also provided a lot of skills, so what instructions how to segregate and all kind of things, recycling, reusing, segregating. But with those information and intervention, there was no improvement in the segregation in our RCT, right? And what we found is why they did not segregate was the city actually sent one truck and put everything together. After house was segregated, and the guy comes and puts everything in one truck. And you see today and tomorrow and day after 1 month, 2 months, and after a few months, you stop segregating because there's no use of segregation. That was the key elements. And we discussed that with the city. If you want to improve it, you really need to manage it separately without putting back together again, right? And now they actually started collecting at different time. So, they are collecting those non-degradable waste one day and the degradable other day kind of thing, so that household can see they are taking it separately and they're managing separately. So recyclable rate is is up after those, change in policy. So some improvements are there, but not it's not 100%, but some improvements is there.
Okay, so last question for you is just to pick up on this slide in front of our faces about SANDEE, and maybe you can stop sharing so we can just talk.
Okay.
So I want you to tell the class a little bit more about SANDEE, what it does. That's the reason you and I have known each other for 15 years, and it's a very, very important part of my life, and certainly a very important part of your life. Yeah, a 2-minute, 3-minute summary.
Yeah, okay. So basically, SANDEE is a research capacity building network that works in South Asia, plus HKS, which is in the Kushimala region, because SANDEE is now with ICIMOD. Earlier, it was independent till 2017. And after 2017, it is now part of ICIMOD, which works in 8 countries in the region. And SANDEE works 8 plus 2 countries, Sri Lanka, Maldives. So 10 countries in the region, right? The basic idea is to actually help researchers from the region to enhance their research capacity through training. SANDEE provides a lot of trainings, including, very intensive summer school where we invite researchers from the region for, if you calculate that in terms of contact hours, about 90 contact hours, which is about 2 semester length for 3 weeks, right? And we invite faculty from different universities around the world, including Subrendu have been also faculty, and people from Berkeley, from Duke, from Cambridge University. Professor Partha Dasgupta has been the regular faculty of SANDEE Summer School, with Kaluran Meller, who actually, sadly passed away last year, 2020 May. They were the founders of SANDEE. So the idea was to provide support, both technical support, financial support, and mentoring. The key part of SANDEE capacity building is the mentoring, where Subrendu have been the mentor for SANDEE for for, I don't know, 15 years out of 20
17.
years. Yeah, 17 years. So like Subrendu, there are other faculty from around the world, from different universities. We actually organize this grant making workshops, where it is not just grant making. That's the one element. But we actually provide a lot of mentoring and technical support to the researchers who want to actually get grant. They actually apply to SANDEE. It takes about a year to screen the proposals. And once the proposals are shortlisted for presenting to the workshop, and we organize workshop, they come to workshop, they present it, and based on the potential of the researchers, can they be the good researcher in future? SANDEE actually puts a lot of effort for those people who haven't gotten a chance before, but they have good potential to be a researcher, in future. So it provides some money mostly for covering field work, and provides a lot of technical support. We also organize like a winter school, where we bring all the researchers together and train them about the research methods, how to do research once they have the data, right? Or how to collect the data. And we also organize trainings for how to actually write proposals to those who haven't written proposal in their life. Because in this part of the world, in South Asia, our university systems are a bit different from what the North American universities are doing, right? So there is a lack of capacity in different aspects. So SANDEE is trying to actually help researchers to bring at part with the other researchers by organizing this underserved areas program. So we provide proposal writing trainings. We provide this research methods training. Summer school for environmental economics who don't have much background in environmental economics. Once they take all these trainings and they are, actually they put proposal together, and then, if they got grant, they work for 2-3 years. And at the end, most of our research are gone to the university faculty. So this is actually a training the trainers program, I would say. We're training the teachers from the universities in South Asia. So far, I think we have trained more than 1,500 researchers, teachers from South Asia. We made about 250 plus grants. And a lot of publications are coming out from the SANDEE network these days. So we actually need to report every year to ICIMOD. So last year we had about 30 papers coming out from the network, where grantees actually got either training or grant from SANDEE. So we actually follow them, we track them, and we actually request them to update to us what they have done in terms of research, in terms of publications, and if they are trying to put new course in their universities after coming to SANDEE. So what we found is out of those trained researchers, about 50%, or more than 50% actually, they reported that they're teaching environmental economics in the region after getting trained from SANDEE. And about 40% actually working with the policymakers, some sort, regional level, local level, country level, to advise them as a consultant, as a policy consultant, or some sort of advisors. So it's a huge contribution to the region because SANDEE is providing, creating this sort of human capital network in the region. So I've been part of SANDEE for 13 plus years now. I actually started for 2 years. I was in the US, I finished my PhD, and I was in Fulbright. So my goal was to spend 2 years in Nepal and go back to US. And when I come back to Nepal, I started working at SANDEE, and I found very interesting place to work with. And so it's still continuing. So I have no interest to go back so far. So thank you, Shubhendu, for giving this forum to share our research, and hope it was useful to the students also.
It very much is, and I think you can see that this project that Mani just presented, several of the co-PIs and the additional researchers were former SANDEE grantees. I could recognize some of their names, and so it's already playing forward, right? They have the capacity to do more work, and with that, I am going to give him a round of applause, and we'll hear this in class. Thank you, Mani, for doing this. We will we'll be in touch, I'm sure.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Namaste.
Bye.